Hi and welcome to the final instalment in the Breitling Cadette Chronograph, the 1950s Breitling with the Venus chronograph movement. With everything checked, the dial is refitted, along with the subdial hands, the hour and minute hands, and the seconds hand, and the entire movement is recased. I did notice on refitting, as you'll see very shortly in a little clip, that there was a problem with the resetting of the chronograph center seconds, which initially I suspected to be the pipe of the center seconds hand being loose on the pivot, which is usually the case. However, in this case, it turned out to be that the seconds hand was actually loose on the pipe. And as explained in the upcoming section, there was a little bit of work needed to rectify this, but as you'll see in this clip here, the seconds hand was resetting. With each reset it was sweeping further and further back as it was slipping on the pipe. But immediately prior to explaining that, the last thing that was needed to be done was to measure and cut the stem so that the crown fits the case. So hi everybody and welcome to what is going to be the final part of this Breitling Cadette service and repair restoration. And other than giving the crystal a very light polish, because it has a couple of tiny, very minor scratches, so I'm just going to use some very fine polishing paste just to give that a buff. This is now as complete as it's going to be. There are a couple of things I'm not 100% happy about. The fourth wheel with its extended pivot, as mentioned previously, I would personally prefer that to be replaced because I believe that's robbing a bit of amplitude owing to it previously having been heat treated. So I would personally say that would need to be replaced, but it's running and it's keeping reasonable time at the moment and has been on test for about a week or so. I just tweaked it a little yesterday as it was losing about a minute over the course, about 2 minutes over the course of 4 or 5 days, and it's had a little tweak to the regulation and is keeping reasonable time. And as you can see, the seconds hand is now fitted. Now I did have some problems with this. When I refitted the seconds hand, it was going back to reset and it was flying back beyond the 12. Initially I thought it was the pipe that was loose on the chronograph runner. However, it turned out that the seconds hand itself was loose on the pipe. I did try to restake this. Unfortunately, that didn't work particularly well, and the pipe had a little bit of damage to its lower part and didn't really give me much area to try and crimp it to get a better fit onto the chronograph runner either. So what I ended up doing was removing the pipe, the old pipe which was damaged, as I say, slightly on the bottom anyway, finding a pipe from an old seconds hand which happened to be the right diameter, and with a little bit of close filing with a loop, I fitted this pipe, which I initially tried to stake in place, which didn't quite work because the section that went through the hole in the hand wasn't quite large enough. So I did something, I tried something that I haven't actually tried before. So far, fingers crossed and touching wood, it does seem to have been successful. And hopefully it will continue to be so. Only time will tell on that. Ideally, of course, a replacement seconds hand would be the preferable choice. And I'm a little unsure about this one because it's actually slightly shorter than the minute hand. Normally the seconds hand on a chronograph are as long as the minute hand, but I don't know. It's the first time I've worked on a Breitling Cadette. That may well be the norm. Now, how I secured this was using solder, and this was a careful process and a bit of trial and error. I got the pipe and cleaned up the back of the hand and cleaned up the pipe where both of the mating faces met, laying the hand face down and sitting the pipe as level as possible on the back of the hand. I then applied some flux paste, which looks kind of like this. It's basically like a it's just like, it looks kind of like a wax essentially. So I applied the flux paste using a cocktail stick to the back, and then some very, very small shavings of solder around the pipe where it meets the hand, and then applying heat via the pipe by holding down with a piece of pegwood, holding down the hand. I then applied heat directly via the pipe with the soldering iron until the flux and solder melted and it flowed, forming a seal around the pipe. As I say, it's the first time I've done this. I would really have liked to have filmed it, but it was such a small part, involved me getting so close with the eyeglass to try and see what was going on. There's just no way I could have physically fitted a camera in to have done that. But I am quite pleased that it worked. I'm not 100% sure how long that will last long term. Hopefully it will be okay. As you can see, the chronograph runs and the minute counter is running and working. We can press the reset there and reset that back. And so far, so good. And obviously with these old chronographs, parts wear, some parts need to be replaced. The common things I see with these old chronographs are the seconds hand pipe needing a little bit of tightening. As a rule, they usually just get loose because of previous services having been removed and refitted. And they can only be sort of restaked back on so many times before things start to get a little bit loose. And this is where Seiko's design is quite a good one, because they use the flats to effectively cut into the seconds hand, and once it's in place it will then remain theoretically in that place over several removal and refitting attempts. And with the round ones that you find on Swiss chronographs, that's not the case. The pipes do wear. They can be crimped a certain amount of times. You can use a pin vise to just nip them up and pop them back on. But there we are with that. It's doing what it needs to do, and it's not 100% perfect. I would personally have preferred to have replaced the fourth wheel complete and to have replaced the seconds hand, but of course the problem is, like anything with vintage movements, is sourcing the parts, and the owner of course being on a little bit of a budget, so we kind of do what we can. But overall I'm relatively pleased with that. I think it's come up quite nicely, so all that's left to do now is just give the crystal a little bit of a polish with a light polish paste and buff up the case, and we're going to call that one done. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.